Well, we're not even, I mean, this is, so obviously, we're talking about this. No, you, it was on the record. Now, you might want to mention, so the pain,
Yeah.
but we don't have to approve it.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think I printed up a fresh one, so if that's still incorrect. Yeah, yeah, it is. Yes. Yes. Rude. I see. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so then you go to yours, read that. So, yep. Good. Number two. Who know how to start? Oh, there he is. Okay. Do we think we can't open this up to people that want to attend? Why not? Okay. Yeah, I just didn't know why we didn't allow them to attend this one, but. Oh, that's fun. Fun, next one. Good.
Oh. I've gotten the signal that we are live streaming, so I am going to call the June 8th, 2021 council meeting to order. All order?
Here.
Michael?
Here.
Here. Here. Turner? Here. Welsh?
Here.
Whitney? Here. Okay, the first thing on the agenda is the minutes of the council meeting of May 11th.
Move approval. A second.
Order.
Yes.
Frankel?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Sog?
Yes.
Turner? Welsh?
Yes.
Whitney? Yes. Okay, next is minutes from the special council meeting of May 27th, 2021.
Move approval.
Second.
Order.
Yes.
Frankel?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Sog?
Yes.
Turner? Yes. Welsh?
Yes.
Whitney? Yes. Okay, pay ordinance 1250 for $453,767.79.
Move to approve.
Second. Order.
Yes.
Frankel?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Sog?
Yes.
Turner? Yes. Welsh?
Yes.
Whitney? Yes. Next is our treasurer's report. Tim?
Thank you. Revenues for the month totaled $275,000 with expenses totaling $380,000, producing a deficit of $105,000. The primary contributor to this month's deficit was the final, I've got the wrong sheet. Primary contributor to this month's deficit was budgeted capital expense for the fire department for both radios and some safety packs, which totaled about $69,000, if I remember correctly. No transfers were made to other funds this month. All operating departments are at or below budget for the year. Our all funds balance stands at $8,679,000 as of as of May 31st. Our Ancora investment accounts total 7.6 million, including accrued interest. As indicated last month, we maintain about $1 million in operating funds and move the remainder to our investment account. And that is my report.
Any questions for Tim? Or any questions on the financial statement?
Good news so far.
I had to notice that our debt's down to $19,000 only.
So exciting.
Yeah, it is. Next is mayor's report, and I have quite a few things. First off, we had a ceremony for Clark Langmack honoring his family for all the service for in a variety of areas for the village. It was very nice and it was a very touching event. And I got a thank you note from Clark. It says, "Dear Karen, thank you for arranging for the support of the village for the Memorial Day tribute and dedication to the Langmack family. The event couldn't have been better. It is a gift to belong to a community that values tradition. Thank you. Thank you very much, Clark." Very nice. Also on Sunday, we did a proclamation where we opened Garden Week, and I must say they have an activity going the entire week. Very interesting. If you want to go to something, look in the pink sheet. They're really doing a nice job with that. In July at our council meeting, I talked with Dean from First Energy, and he's going to come back to the July meeting. It's interesting. He's helped a couple times lately with different things and pulling data for a resident and trying to find out and fix what's going on. So it should be interesting. So that's going to be on for July. Nature Camp has opened this week and has started, and so far is going very well with the preschool. The American Rescue Plan is, they've sent out a lot of rules, I can tell you that. I expect that in the near future, and I'm saying this because I've had a couple people ask about it, that the mayors associations will do a shortened bullet point form or synopsis of it in the near future. At the moment, they're very busy in Columbus with the state budget, which has to be in and passed by June 30th. So there will be more to come on that. And I think that is everything I have. Anne, did you want to?
I'm going to read because I have a microphone. When I started on council, it was with the intention of a 2-year term commitment. So I am not running in November. So it's been an enjoyable and sometimes challenging experience. And I'd like to thank my fellow council members and mayor for working with me and forming an effective governing body. And Janet, Greg, Tom, Dave, the village residents are very fortunate to have such competent and dedicated department heads. During the uncertainty of the last year and a quarter, you've provided residents with security and stability in their neighborhood. I think that's got a lot of value. So, and Todd, thank you for your legal guidance. Chris, I appreciate support on all things engineering and riparian. So you all have encountered my Irish and German tendencies, and although I'm not running again, I've not lost the passion or the determination for the continuation of a vibrant and beautiful community. Gates Mills offers a unique village for residents of Northeast Ohio.
Thank you, Anne. Very nice, and thank you for all your service. Okay, next is Clerks Report.
Nothing to report.
Okay, committee reports.
I have a few to talk about. I am the council representative for the cell tower committee. Now, you may not know that we have a cell tower committee, and I didn't know we did either, but every time there's a cell tower question, the mayor calls me. So the mayor and I are effectively the cell tower committee. So this is actually very important. we have one cell tower in the village on Carpenter Road, and it is under a long-term lease. We own the property underneath, and the tower is leased to American Tower. That lease runs through 2038. At that point in time, at the moment, American Tower has approached us and offered to extend the lease for another 30 or 40 years, I guess 40 years, which is intriguing on the surface. So I have made a number of calls, and uniformly, the response is you would be absolutely nuts to do that. So the question is, why would we or wouldn't we? So I've had to then dig into what would happen if we let the lease run out. So at that point in time, American Tower would have the right to tear down the tower because they built the actual tower, not the land underneath it, and then return the land back to its original state. In a normal community with lots of options, they might do that. But in the village of Gates Mills, there would be no other spot that they could put up a tower. Now you get to the tenants on the tower, which turn out to be, interestingly, Verizon, AT&T. A lot of people didn't think AT&T was on there, but at least my conversations, they confirmed that they are. And I believe it is Sprint that at the moment is on the tower. As you may recall, T-Mobile has merged with Sprint, so I presume they'll be taking that over, or I guess they inherited that. Now, the question would then be, if we got into a tussle with American Tower and they said, no, they are going to tear it down, then we would take on and build a new tower on the same spot, and the three tenants would simply roll over onto our tower because they want coverage in this valley and they couldn't get it if that tower didn't exist because there's no other tower that they could go to. That's the current framework. So the leverage increases. It's more than likely that American Tower would abandon the tower and we'd have to pay them $1, and then we would own the tower and we would establish the new leases. Now, Todd, you have experience in this area. If I've missed anything, you don't necessarily have to say it tonight, but you could. I didn't ever reach out to you. This isn't a pressing matter. They will come back to us several times, but I just want to be on the record that I'm not in favor of I've told the representative for American Tower that I personally wasn't, as a councilman, wasn't in favor, and that I would review this with council, and that unless I get back to him, he should assume we're not going to be interested at this point in time. So that's
My only comment is you're probably spot on, but I would like to review the lease. See what our rights are. with
Okay.
respect to the expiration of the lease. Normally, there's a right of first refusal or turnover of the tower to the landlord.
yes, and I'm sorry, I'll let you do that, and maybe I misread it, but what seems very clear is they turn it over for $1. We pay them $1. So
Chip, I thought in our income lines, we only have them for like another year or two.
no, there's three 5-year extensions,
Okay.
right? And it's 2 more
I just
years.
don't have that on my forecast.
It rolls over. So it's 2 more years and then 3 5 years. So that's the 17 years, which takes us out to
Do we know
2038.
the amounts or?
It goes up a little bit. Yeah, there's an escalator in there. I can certainly find that out for you, Janet. So, and then it's in the lease. Yeah, well, it's in, stack is this side. There's all kinds of paperwork. So at any rate, if anybody has a strong reaction or wants to has questions or whatever, but I just want to go on the record that that's what I've recommended and the mayor is in agreement at this point. Second topic is, as you may recall, in our work last summer into the fall on the long-range plan, we identified that we should review our professional services. And so I have initiated a process to review our village engineer function. Chris Courtney is well aware of this. I have approached 3 other engineering firms that do work for other communities in the Chagrin Valley. And we have put together a ad hoc committee that's comprised of myself, Larry Frankel, Tim Reynolds, Tony Panzika, Mark Salzman, and of course, Dave Biggert. And I've also had many conversations with Dave that this is absolutely critical that he's front and center in this, because we certainly wouldn't want to end up with a village engineer that he wasn't comfortable working with. We're going to meet with each of the 3 outside engineering firms in a couple of weeks. They're going to come in individually, and Dave and I will meet with them just to give them a little bit of an overview and see what kind of questions and information they may have. And then at the same time, we're going to have our committee meet, and Chris and Dave are going to give the committee an overview of just what the village engineering function is all about, educate the committee on that. And then we will be asking all 4 engineering firms to make a presentation, to submit their qualifications, which is a more formal part of the process. They're all used to doing that, and then make presentations to the committee towards the end of July, again, individually. And Chris will be the last to present. He's very comfortable and pleased about that. And then we will see where we are, but geared towards making a recommendation to council with a target of the September council meeting. The mayor intends to attend those presentations from the other engineering firms, as well as Chris. And they will be open meetings, so anybody there'll be an announcement, so you're certainly welcome to attend. That'll be again towards the end of July.
Will we get
So
a notice of when the meetings are?
yeah, we will. Yeah, we haven't even remotely set them up yet. We want to get through this introductory part first. So, and again, it could be a very straightforward process, and we end up being very comfortable with where we already are. But I would welcome, others to observe, because we will be coming back to council with our recommendation. So, third, this is a part of the Recreation Committee. There are 3 components to the Recreation Committee. First is tennis. As chair, as the council person heading the Recreation Committee, I'm very pleased to report that I haven't spent 2 seconds on tennis, because Clark Langmack takes it all, laid it all out, and has a whole tennis program lined up for the summer. It's a bit of a stretch to try to get people out there, but he makes a big effort and sometimes has some reasonable turnout. The second element is pickleball, and a little bit of, or I shouldn't say that, a lot of help from Clark, but also Jane Mitchell has really taken the bull by the horns this year. You might have seen that a week ago Sunday there, having the demonstration, and then a lot of people learning about pickleball. And she's lined up all kinds of activities. If you saw this month's pink sheet. So again, I didn't spend 2 seconds on it. They just got it all going. The third element is bocce. We continue to struggle with, can we form some sort of a bocce league, et cetera. But what I do want to do is to form a bocce tournament. I am recommending or suggesting that we have 4 teams. The Village Council would be Team A. The Service Department would be Team B, no particular order here. The Police Department would be Team C, and the Fire Department would be Team B. And Janet and Dorothy and Jean can, depending on their talents, could either be the ringers for one of those teams or be drafted. But
We'll drive the golf cart with the.
so I'd like 1 or 2 people, and I'd like somebody from police and somebody from fire, and I will alert Dave, and I'll call a little meeting, and we'll map out just how it can work, because you can't have, you can have all kinds. Maybe we have people just stepping in, 1 person rolls the ball at a time. We got to work out the logistics, but I'm throwing it out as an idea. We'd make it festive. We'll have some some refreshments, probably do it, late in the afternoon. How far we carry the refreshments or whatever, but obviously intended to make it a lot of fun sometime probably in July. So,
Sounds like fun.
I think it'd be fun.
well, we could try. Yes, it takes about 2 seconds. You hold the ball, you stand there and you roll. But no, there is
Not a tough
quite an art to it, believe me. So, so it's a lot of fun actually. And just for reference, personally, we had a bocce party summer before last. Obviously, last summer was a little difficult. And we had 3 other couples, and we thought, well, we'll do one round, and then we'll do another round, and then we got to figure out what we're going to do for dinner. Well, one round took like 2 hours. So, depending on how you do it, it was wonderful. Everybody had a wonderful time. So I think if you've never done it, it's a lot of fun.
Sounds like fun.
I think time stagnates when you have red wine with the bocce. That's why it
again?
took 2 hours.
Huh?
I said, time stagnates when you have red wine with your.
Well, that might have added to the dimension, yes. So anyways, so that'll be,
Car or something?
Mhm.
Can you win a new car?
you get
Oh,
to
boy.
drive the
You'll have to
Tesla. Maybe we can drive the
15
Tesla for an hour or something, but anyways, no, we need to come up with at least a plaque or something and start this. And I think with next Saturday coming up with potential new council people, that should be one of the criteria as to whether we have any potential bocce players, because we may need to strengthen our
May
team. here,
run.
so. Anyways, so that's my committee reports.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other committee reports?
Not a committee report, but a follow-up from last meeting. Someone was going to call CT Consultants to find out if they're ready to start on the plan.
I did, and
That was
interestingly, she was supposed to get back to me late last week. Now, I was out of town, but I didn't get a message, so I'm actually going to follow up with her again to see what her calendar looks like. And then once we know that she's ready to, can start at some point this year, then we will go back and look at the steering committee and make sure that everybody's going to be comfortable, still interested and comfortable to meet in person. So.
But it sounds like it.
I think so, but she was checking her commitments to other engagements at this point.
And I'm gonna. comment
Nancy?
About planning and zoning. We have a kind
You-
of controversial, we have a controversial matter at planning and zoning regarding a pickleball court that was constructed right on the border of the Conservancy property at Sherman Road without a permit. So I want to make sure that we start alerting our residents that they need a permit. And I think what I'll do is get together with Dave and put something in the pink sheet so that we don't have a situation like this again, where we have a very expensive concrete pad that may have to be removed. And it's basically just about encroaching on another property owner's property. And in order to even screen it, they would have to basically do the screening on the Conservancy property.
Mm.
And one other thing that wasn't checked, which was brought up by Sandra at the meeting, since she's a neighbor, was the easements that might be under the pickleball court. So we have asked the property owner to get a hold of the easements because they do not allow a permanent structure to be over the easement, which is an access for water and electricity.
It's a water easement.
Especially the water easement. So I guess the reason I'm bringing it up is that, first of all, it's controversial. Second of all, we want to alert our residents about the permitting process, because having no idea that there was a permit required isn't a good excuse. And we have had this happen in the past where we have had people remove the structures that they have put in inappropriately. So I just want to put that out there for people that are watching and put it in the minutes so that our residents are aware. And I think we will put something in the pink sheet about.
I
the permitting
mentioned
process.
permits for painting and fences and whatnot, but we can't seem to say it enough.
Well, I just think it didn't occur to this property owner that a
Well,
pickleball court required a permit.
Unfortunately, I think that happens when they put somebody else in charge and they're out of town.
Right.
And
Anyhow, I just wanted, I wanted to bring it to the attention of council and any residents that might be watching so that we can spread the word.
the pink sheet doesn't reach everybody. And so how we communicate to the village just because we put it in the pink sheet. But I also am concerned when a new owner moves in many cases, they haven't actually physically moved in, but then they call their landscaper who then starts to clear out trees. And of course, they don't know much because they haven't even lived here, and they call somebody who may or may not do much work in the village. And I don't know, Sandra, if your committee, but every time a house changes hands, I'd like to see a summary document go to the realtor to deliver to the new owner, or make sure we get it to the new owner to just say, just to remind you, in a friendly way, obviously, positive way, but here's some of the, thank you for moving to our wonderful village, shows all the great things, but here's a few things to be mindful of. But that would be another time to also
Well,
reinforce
it would
that.
be true in any community. It just seems like people need to be reminded. when-
A summary of needed permits might be a
Totally.
good way to put the ad in the pink sheet.
One other
Well,
thing I'd like to
and-
bring,
And to Chip's point, that is something on the agenda for the Positively Gates Mills Committee to
Right.
do, especially for new residents and the way houses are turning over now. It's a good, good time, make it part of their welcome kit. So
That's
we
a great
can- I'll
idea.
get together with you and we'll make
we
sure
can
add
work
that.
on it together.
Let's work on it.
What's the
I'd also-
responsibility, before you go on, Nancy, what is the responsibility of the contractor who puts the pickleball court in?
Well, That's between the
Well,
property owner and the contractor.
exactly.
They are going to have to figure out that who's going to pay for the removal if we decide not to permit it.
Well, doesn't the contractor usually know that there's a permit required?
I think this is,
Not?
could be a landscaper, they put drainage in. I really don't know the details because we're just presented with, oh, by the way, we put in this pickleball court and apparently the Conservancy spoke to Dave.
And it's
member of the
interesting, most of the work.
So that's
since we
how
Got notified, has
got-
been completed.
kind of behind the eight ball. Let's
Yeah.
put it that way. I do have one other thing not related, if everyone's finished with that topic. I want to make sure Nick comes back on our dispatch. I was thinking he was going to be here.
He's
at
willing to
this
come back.
meeting. I know, but I know there was a committee and I haven't heard any update. I know, Chip, you haven't had a meeting, have you? You've been our
No.
representative.
No,
So I'd like
But
to
he
get
did
that
talk
going.
to, you want to,
I've
Okay,
I
Deb.
had breakfast with John Finley, who will head that committee. They are in the process of potentially having some other communities come into the dispatch, so they're waiting. That's going to be confirmed or not over the summer, and so it's not likely to kick off until about September. Had John Finley and I talked about some of the things that we ought to try to look at as part of the committee. He's very enthusiastic about it. A very interesting guy. One of the two trustees of Chagrin Falls Township.
Mhm.
And so, and other than that, that's the status of that. As far as having Nick come,
So how are you recommending that he not come back until end of the year or what are you thinking? I mean, I was hoping we'd get some kind of update on some of the
we could get an
suggestions.
update, if the
Well, let's see if there
electric
is one.
company's coming in July, why don't we ask for August? Do you think that'd work?
I mean, it certainly could. As far as what the committee's going to do, I can't.
I just wonder if Nick's taken any of the suggestions or had some ideas on things he's going to do differently that we talked about.
Yeah,
I don't know if he's ready yet.
Probably not. So then there would be no point in bringing him until maybe at least the committees. I leave it up to you.
okay. I think that, I can tell you in my discussions with John that, and my impression when I visited, and I know you visited, it is an incredibly lean staff. And while Nick is very responsive and seems to be, very much on top of things, he's certainly not looking for things to do. So, as far as my meeting with him, we talked about some things, but the main thing will get accomplished with this committee, actually. So,
I think when we gave the first report, we were trying to discern, to present to council that even though our dispatch fees have gone up, they've gone, based on the chart he gave us, they've gone up less than most, and that we were in a good position. So I just want to reinforce that as we go along, that we are feeling good about where we are with dispatch and not lose sight of that's the direction we want to stay.
Yeah, I think the committee will get into how the communities get charged and if the current way is appropriate or if there's some other ways. So we'll see how the committee comes out on.
Great.
Okay, yep, okay.
Karen, I overheard you say that in July, First Energy is coming back.
Yes.
Can you see anything more? They have a report for us?
Well, he's going to come back on some of the things he's been looking into. We had requested, he look into different data and whatnot, and I just requested again for one of our residents up on Chestnut, actually. So he'll give us some update on that and whatnot.
Good.
And if we want to have other questions, he'll come back again.
Any progress on cemetery lots?
Nothing, Ed. Any other committee reports or
I might just
input?
comment though, somebody made a comment about putting in the pink sheet a summary of permit requirements in the village. I think that's a really good idea because, for instance, word of mouth from your neighbor could be the
Yeah,
best
that's a good
advice you
point.
get. So if I read in the pink sheet that you need a permit for a pickleball court and my new neighbor, on Old Mill was about to pour the concrete, I might be able to say to them, did you get a permit for that? And stop it before it happens. But that would have only that news would have, or that information only would have come to them because the neighbor was aware of the permit.
I think a list of all the different things might be a good thing,
Yeah.
not just paint and
Yeah.
fences, but
But,
I agree.
trees coming down,
Right.
concrete being laid, if there's just a nice brief summary, either on the website and or in the pink sheet, I think that would be very helpful.
Well, I think most contractors know they need a permit for things.
I
It's just
do.
that when you get these kind of off the grid,
Yeah,
kind of a landscaper who doesn't know
Right,
or
exactly.
something like that.
anything else?
On the flu shots for the band concert, made some progress on that. Rite Aid has agreed in principle to come and provide them. They're asking us for some kind of a hash count. As far as I know, the last thing I saw from the CDC, it was 12 years old or older. And they're going to be able to provide the Pfizer, I guess, which qualifies for that. And there's some paperwork they submitted that the village has to sign off on, which I sent to the mayor. And so we're affirmative at this point if people want it.
Great.
Will they come back for the second shot?
They asked me that, what preparation you wanted to do, and I said, it's pretty much writer's license, how we want to do that. If we want to provide it the next council meeting or, a next village event, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, they might
Well, we'll
have to come to the community house and set up here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or we could, they could go to Rite
They
Aid
can go
or
to
they could
Rite
come
Aid.
back here. I mean, we'll
I
do
think,
it however
I
they
think under
think.
the law that if you get your first shot, you have to get the second shot from the first provider. That's the way I learned it, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Maybe Tom
think-
knows.
Well, let's see how many people we get and make a
Yeah.
decision based on that.
So it's a go if we want it.
Okay? Anyone else? Okay, next is Police Department. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Everybody should have received a copy of my report. I'll be happy to take any questions you may have.
Will the Tesla be in the 4th of July parade?
Yes, that's our goal. It will not be road ready, so to speak, with lights and everything like that. At least we don't think so at this point, but it'll be marked. We're hoping to get the graphics on the car in the next couple of weeks. And we should have the charging station installed probably within the next 2 weeks as well.
Sounds like our cameras are already paying off.
But yes, terrific.
Yeah, they've worked well for us. We had another incident here just in the last week that we had to tap into the Old Mill camera and, obviously we had something going on with that. Nothing major really, but, still we had to look into it. So it paid off there as well.
And was our speed awareness device budgeted? or
It was,
someone
yes.
donated?
No, this is budgeted. It just arrived. Came in- Yeah,
I
this-
like to donate one for my street.
It came in Tuesday and then,
We can
we're
arrange
still
that.
it's a little bit different. So we're figuring out the programming on it. And we're gonna get that out here soon. So I
Great.
have a couple of them out there.
When I see your detail of activity and I see under speed, obviously a lot more activity this year. I know last year, with the office, it was difficult to have an officer pull somebody over with COVID. But how many times do you charge them versus give them a warning?
Well, that's really based on the individual officer discretion, the nature of the violation, in the case of speeding, road conditions, how much traffic's out there, what the speed is, what the driver record's like. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, really is. That's just the speeding example. Stop sign, was it a minor roll through a stop sign or did it blow through it? So the officers have a lot of discretion out there.
I'm astounded, this isn't related to Gates Mills, but I'm sure everybody sees this when you go out on the freeway, 80 is the new 60 or 60, yeah.
Well,
New
I'll
80,
tell you,
whatever. I mean, it's just amazing how fast everybody's going.
I can tell you. So my wife does most of the driving, by the way, when we're out. But I drive slow. But anyway, so she was driving. This was just Saturday night. So it was like around 9 o'clock, around 480. I think I was telling them there. We're driving 480 and she's driving. She goes, oh boy. I'm like, what? And there were 3 cars. I don't know if it was a road rage incident or what. They were actually, so they were 480 away, coming, they were like an orange coming back into town. And I'll tell you, they were going at least 100 miles an hour and they were like changing
God.
lanes and doing all that, cutting people off. It was dangerous. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously for the themselves too, but the motoring public, I was so mad,
Yeah.
And I will tell you, if an officer, in my opinion, if an officer even would have tried to pull them over, they wouldn't stop, and just to go after a car like that, how fast you would have to drive to catch up to a vehicle like that?
Tesla.
So,
Yeah.
you know, but, it was so upsetting. I mean, it really was. I mean, man, that 480 is like a track meet out.
Just need a big neck.
Crazy. But you do see it out there. 480 is bad. So anyways. Any other questions? And real quick, I'd like to also just throw my 2 cents in. I'd like to thank both Mary and Ann for their support over the years, with the police department. I mean, obviously, we've done a lot together. They've been very supportive of what our needs are. And I would just like to thank them personally on behalf of the police department. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
that'll conclude my report.
Okay, next is Service Department, which was in your packet, and Dave is on vacation, so if you have a question, we'll try to answer it between Janet or Chris or I, or Chip.
I think the hazardous waste thing is terrific. I mean, that we were able to
That's a lot.
collect that at a volunteer event. That's wonderful.
It was a good day, and combining the events, the medicine and the different things also worked really well. When the day they did the medicine take.
Chris, so
And is
before
this
we,
new?
I was going to ask Chris before we go on, if, while we're on the service department, could you discuss the water runoff from the paddock that was discussed in planning and zoning? So is that an actual thing where their water supply to their well can be contaminated from the?
Most of areas.
Is the
Anything
house
else?
on County Line Road a part of the Perino development? Anybody?
No,
Kind of curious.
well, this
It's a
is just,
different one?
this is just off of Mayfield North before you get to the
Right, it's
Hawken.
not Perino, it's a separate one.
A separate one.
I think there's 2 that are gonna go up there on County Line that aren't part of the
Wow.
Perino thing. Am I not right, Chris? I think
Right.
so.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, that concludes service. Next is Fire Department, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. You should have received a copy of the fire department report for May. A pretty standard month for us. Still issues with people cooking and setting
I
off
think
their
we need
smoke
cooking
detectors.
classes.
But I would be happy to answer any questions that you would have. Seeing none or hearing none, I would also like to thank councilpersons Reynolds and Whitney for years of support for the fire department. Being very open-minded, listening when there are problems, and being willing to work together to resolve those. You've always supported the fire department, and I truly appreciate it, and you will both be truly missed by myself and the department. Thank you. That concludes the fire department.
Thank you. Okay. Next is a motion to advise for a public hearing for Tuesday, July 13th, 2021 at 5:55 to your comments on the 2022 tax budget. We need
So
a
moved.
motion.
Thank you.
Second,
Alberta.
yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh,
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes. Okay. Next is ordinance 2021-18. Sandra?
This is a first reading, an ordinance providing for the submission to the electors of the Village of Gates Mills, a proposed amendment to the charter of the Village of Gates Mills to renew for a period of 5 years the existing 1 mil tax levy for the public purpose of conserving, retaining, protecting, and preserving land, water, forest, open, natural, or wetland areas in this municipality, predominantly in their natural, scenic, open, or wooded condition, or a suitable habitat for fish, plants, or wildlife, including the acquisition of such real property or interest therein as may be necessary to carry out that purpose. I'm not declaring an emergency. That would remove section 9 from this reading, from this ordinance. And also there's one correction in the first whereas, second line, section 1 of the charter of this village at the November 2nd, 2021 general election.
Todd, do you want
I think it's necessary. Planning to be-
to
I
fix it?
looked today, you're going to write on the 30th day of effective. Two.
September
Cutting it
3rd.
off. There's some misunderstanding. Public. between
Yep.
3 reading. Emergency act. Reading. Separate. That's that. And. Read this. Separate. August. Wait till August. Pass it. Yeah, 30th day. Back. Something happened.
Okay, so what's your recommendation?
Leave the language
Todd?
in.
Keep it in, okay, all right,
Will go into effect. Pass it by 5.
okay, all right, good, thank you.
What
And
was
by
the
the
other
way,
change you had? Was it the
Um,
change already made?
The date,
Dates.
The one already made? Sandra,
yeah,
was it the one in section?
it's the,
Four?
right,
Section in the beginning. it
where,
also
right at the
is,
beginning,
Janet,
first whereas,
in the first.
second line.
No, that's true.
Was it-
That's the last time it was passed.
Oh,
2016.
Okay. Thank you, thank you.
You're right.
Just to talk a little bit about this, ordinance would authorizes the village to place a 1 mil 5-year levy on the November 2nd, 2021 ballot. If passed, the proceeds would go to the village's existing land conservation and open space fund The language is exactly the same as that authorizing the levy back in 1991. And that it's 5 renewals, the last being 2016. There's nothing in this ordinance that allocates percentages of funds. It just says that the village may enter into agreements as necessary with other entities for the purpose of conservation. As we all know, in the past, 95% of the funds have gone to the Gates Mills Land Conservancy. However, we all know from the meeting on the 27th of May that they've come to us indicating that their mission has changed. And it changed from simply property acquisition and stewardship to more perpetual stewardship, maintenance, and building its endowment. So given that, we first need to talk about what the agreement might be between the Land Conservancy and the village before we proceed to vote on the ordinance itself. So you received by email yesterday an agreement a proposed agreement between the village and the Land Conservancy that speaks to the agreement for how the funds would be spent between both by the Land Conservancy and by the village. And there is a proposal in here that the funds be divided 60-40, 60% to the village and 40% to the Land Conservancy. This morning, the Land Conservancy had a board meeting, and at that full discussion, they came back to the village and indicated that their preference and their strong unanimous support was for a 50-50 split. And the reason for that is that as a part of this agreement, we've really talked in general about a more collaborative relationship going forward between the Land Conservancy and the village. And you'll see in this agreement, there's even a point that says, should the Land Conservancy consider additional property acquisition, they would come back to the village for coordination. It does not say that the village would have a veto in that action, but it does say coordination. It also talks in this agreement about possible acquisition of land, protection of natural habitat connected with conservation development projects, and the preservation of village-owned property in coordination with the Gates Mills Land Conservancy. And we do have examples from the past, for example, the purchase of the Hayes property for possible use as a wastewater treatment center plant in the future. There also has in the past been some purchase by the Land Conservancy of development rights, such as Carpenter Road, which again was a transfer of funds between the two. So there has been collaboration, but we really feel at this point with the change in the mission that going forward, there should be even more collaboration. So that is kind of the idea, the perspective behind the 50-50. In terms of the so that's up for discussion. In terms of the 60-40, again, that was determined probably more on the need of the village to see that given there's a decrease in the potential for acquisition of property, that there's less funding that would go to the Land Conservancy. So this is really up for discussion at this point, and that's what I have to present. I'd be open to answering any questions or accepting comments.
I have a question.
So everybody has the bullet point agreement form and the letter from the Conservancy that came this morning too.
I do not.
Okay, I'll give you that letter.
So I had a question. If we get rid of the emergency clause, do we need to vote on this tonight, or would we be voting on next?
You can
Council
get rid of the emergency clause at any council meeting up through August.
We're not suspending the rules.
The emergency
three
clause
readings.
says you have to wait 30 days for it to go into effect.
I see.
So if you have the emergency clause, it can go into effect immediately. That's what the emergency
Okay.
clause does.
And tonight's, as far as the ordinance, is just a reading. We don't vote on that.
So my next question would be, the agreement, is this a binding agreement?
Let me give you a quick perspective. In the past, the levy has gone to the voters. When it gets approved in November, then the following February, at least the last cycle, the agreement between the village and Land Conservancy was presented to council and approved at that point. This time, because we're not doing exactly the same thing, the thinking is, and the Land Conservancy request is that we work out the agreement before we approve the levy so that everybody knows what the terms are.
That makes very good sense.
So now the question is, what Sandra's done is have discussions with them and put a framework. This is sort of a talking points or whatever, just the kinds of things. This isn't binding yet. This is the question, of course, out of tonight is, and I think the goal is any feedback either tonight or whatever, and presumably at the next council meeting, maybe we'll have a little more specific one, maybe further discussions with them. And at the August meeting, we would approve an agreement and approve the ordinance.
Yeah,
I think that's very reasonable.
I think is the
Might.
game plan. Pardon me?
might.
Might, yes.
I mean, we
Well, okay,
talk
but
about when it passes. We might or might not
Right,
approve
so this is to
any of this.
discuss.
I'm sorry. Yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to say is if we were to approve putting it on the ballot, we would need to think about approving this
I
agreement at the same
understand.
time.
I just want to make the
yeah.
language clear.
Thank you. No,
because when you
I-
talk about when it passes.
No,
we haven't
I didn't mean
authorized
that. What I was trying to
don't
say is
know
the
whether
two
it
need to be
passed.
together, which is different from how we've done it in the past. That's all.
Right.
The idea is to get input so that it can go back to the Land Conservancy. You know, it's an agreement, it's a negotiation. So
I think that makes
yeah,
very good
they
sense.
want some
We had a
input.
thorough discussion at the last.
Okay, but now we have where it is at this moment.
Todd, can the agreement be passed before the levy would pass? Okay. Okay.
There were a couple of questions that came up at the May 27th meeting, including clarify how much money goes to each, the village and the Land Conservancy, because that wasn't clear. Clarify the activities eligible for conservation spending. Describe process for authorizing expenditures and communicating. There was a discussion about transparency and communicating to the village residents about what the agreement is well in advance of the election. So this agreement took those questions into account. And if there are other questions, we can add to the agreement. The question about describe the process for authorizing expenditures, and I think Larry brought that up. For the village, it would be either the money would be budgeted for certain conservation purposes that we would vote on, or it'd be like any other resolution. If there's an expenditure that comes up, it comes before council and it's voted on. Currently, some of the examples of how the funds have been spent are for the village anyway, include the annual dues for the Chagrin River Watershed Partners, contribution to the Hayes property that I mentioned. And I just noted in the minutes from our May council meeting, there were 38 bare-rooted trees planted by the service department. I don't know what the cost of those were, but that would come under, an expenditure by the village as well. And the Land Conservancy has their own, process for expenditures.
Is there any consideration to putting in any agreement that might happen, a requirement for significant fundraising by the Land Conservancy that the village might consider matching as part of the agreement? If they raise some funds, perhaps that would count toward, I think the idea of fundraising has not become part of the agreement. And we talked about that at the last meeting, that they raise a very minimal amount of money. $25,000 is not a lot of money. So I don't see any commitment toward improving the Land Conservancy's
I don't know that
efforts.
language would be inappropriate for an ordinance, though. I mean,
I'm talking about for the agreement.
for
that-
the agreement, okay.
Right, if we were to enter into an agreement, it seems like the Land Conservancy needs to have more effort made for fundraising beyond just getting tax revenue from the villagers for the things that they're now talking about using it for, which are endowment, which they could certainly, it seems like, raise money for rather than use tax revenue in my thought, and other things that they're looking for in terms of, I just
I think-
it
I
would be
think
a
that's-
significant fundraising effort. I think that's something I brought up at the.
At the last meeting.
I think that would be an interesting counter proposal to help bridge the gap between 60-40 and 50-50, is to say, well, tell you what, you raise 5% and we'll match the other 5%. And I think it's not an unhealthy thing to ask the Land Conservancy to begin to think about, how they really are going to build up their endowment. And this would give them a financial incentive to do so.
I just don't know how villagers feel about endowment. I don't think they think of this levy as an endowment support. It's like our reserve funds. They don't think of, let's have a big tax levy so we can have more reserve funds in the village. They like to think that we're spending the appropriate amount and that we have reserves that are required by law, and whatever other reserves we have. If push came to shove, I think villagers would want to reduce their taxes rather than have us have a huge sinking fund kind of thing, which is what they're looking at.
Go ahead, Ann.
I think
Move your microphones a little bit closer.
it's been my experience with Conservancy that the trustees work very hard. And it was mentioned at the last meeting that people like to donate for a specific cause, like the piece of property on the corner of whatever. The Conservancy does have an annual dinner. They have a speaker. There is quite a bit of outreach, when time allows the trustees to do it. I also think that 50-50, since we are needing to do some education for the voters and residents, 50-50 makes more sense and might have a better outcome for both the village and the Conservancy. That the villagers might feel more comfortable with the 50-50 since it's,
I think to Ann's point, we're not trying to set up the Conservancy to lose this levy in November. So I think it behooves us in conjunction with the Land Conservancy, if approved, to package it in such a way that it has, a chance of success in November. Otherwise, this is a total waste of time. If we constrain it too much and the villagers aren't happy with the package that's presented to them, it won't pass in November. So let's think in terms of collaboratively making this as attractive as we can, because it is kind of a new way of business for the Conservancy. And then agree that if it does pass and we agree to put it on the ballot, that we step up to the plate ourselves to help market it along with the Land Conservancy, so it has a fighting chance in November. And if it doesn't pass, then that's the will of the voter. But I did mention, Nancy, to one of the officers that I thought their 35th anniversary, which is coming up in 2 years, it would be a great fundraising opportunity for them. Whether whether it be a great speaker like Ralph, Talamy coming in, or a dinner or whatever, but they have 2 years to plan a significant benefit to add to their endowment fund, and they thought that was a good idea. So let's be encouraging.
I think this is a good time to say,
Be realistic.
the Land Conservancy has been a positive to the village. It has done good things. It has supported a lot of the different things that have happened over the years. Hayes property being a good one. I still say saying goodbye to the bridge is another good one. I think we should all embrace it in a positive manner. It's how we decide to move forward. If we're going to move forward in a collaborative way, and how we're going to do it. So it is a positive, and I think we should be embracing that. Any other questions? And then I have I got a couple emails that I will enter into the minutes.
I just want to add a couple of comments too. The Land Conservancy has owns 27 properties and, has easements on 24, and the volunteers on the Land Conservancy manage those properties and, review them according to the requirements of the Land Trust Alliance, of which our Land Conservancy is the first totally private volunteer Land Conservancy to be certified. So when you talk, Mary, in your example of communicating with the public about the work of the Land Conservancy and the value, that's certainly a part of it, the volunteer hours and contribution. And the other thing too is I always keep in mind that if anything were to happen to the Land Conservancy, that responsibility for those properties falls to the village. It's village property in the sense of being owned by our village residents. It's not going to go to another Land Conservancy, and we're the backstop. And nobody's saying, Nancy, that we're talking about percentages here. We're not talking about getting rid of the Land Conservancy by any stretch. But I think it's just an
Whether or
important
not
point.
it's tax supported is the issue.
Mhm.
The Land Conservancy will go, their inspection of the properties once a year and those kinds of things that are required by the land trust, that could continue. They're still going to be an organization. The question is whether villagers want to support with a tax levy the continuation of that tax levy for whatever village purposes or the Conservancy's purposes. I just want to be very transparent with villagers, what we're thinking and what the Conservancy is thinking. And I think we need to explore every possible avenue. A tax levy is very important. People want to know exactly where their tax dollars are going. And every month we come and tell them how we're spending it here at council. So I want to make sure that we have the same communication regarding this levy.
I'd like to make a couple of comments. I struggled with 40%. I hear 50%. I hear the amount of support that the community has had for all of this in the past, 65% approval 5 years ago. But I also know that then we do need to make sure that we educate that we have conserved a lot of property in this village, and it does have a tax impact. The difference between 40% and 50% is 10% of $1 million, which is $100,000, $20,000 a year. It is 100,000, but 40% is already $400,000. So 400 or 500,000 going to the Land Conservancy over the next 5 years is a lot of money. And they didn't give me any compelling reason why they need that much more money in their presentation. So I'm a little bit loath to say, well, we need to get this up to 50% so it's appealing to the voters, because what it's really saying is we need to continue to give money to the Land Conservancy so we can conserve more property, and I get concerned about that. But I'm not going to die on that sword, but I'm just telling you, I'm not comfortable with 50% at this point. Now, a concern underneath that is sort of a second point, which is I believe their numbers say that at the end of this year, they will have roughly 500,000 in cash. Nat Smith presented that they will need as much as 700,000 for a proper endowment to enter into a full stewardship. I would want to make sure that this agreement binds them that by the end of this next 5 year period, that they have a sufficient endowment. I wouldn't want them in the middle of this to say, oh, wow, we've really got a great opportunity and we're just going to spend that 500,000 plus, the other money we're getting from the village and end up with no endowment or a weakened endowment. And now 5 years from now, we got to do another levy because we got to bolster the endowment. So if they need another 200,000, I don't know. I don't know that Nat, his numbers, I think were, a pro forma, a rough estimate. But I think we would like to make sure you put it in this agreement, Sandra, retention by the Land Conservancy in order to, and retention of the levy funds in order to endow it with sufficient financial resources. I would just like that to be a little more specific and binding. Maybe a minimum amount each year that would have to go towards the endowment. They're the ones that said they needed 700,000. So if that's their number, then that's what should be in here, that they should be putting in 40,000 a year per year over the 5 years and not spend any of the existing without coming back to council for some sort of approval. I'm not, I don't want to totally tie their hands, but I don't want to give them the latitude of deciding that they can dip into that, because that's really then putting the burden back on the taxpayers in the next cycle, that we're going to have to do more money, or putting the burden back on council. So now, if you take the math, and if that number were 200,000, then the additional money that they'd be getting would be 200,000 to 300,000, depending on whether they do 40% or 50%. Still a lot, because you can buy a lot of property, but it's at least a different way of looking at that 40 to 50%, if they need 700,000 for their endowment. So just a little sidebar on here, you wrote down below. I think the other point here that we would want to make sure we communicate is that this gives the village some funds that we would otherwise have to spend out of our general fund for these things. We're not trying to create new, we are potentially going to do some additional things, but it does help us with our financial challenges. And you did put on here the restoration and maintenance of former horse bridle trail system. I think that could be a wonderful idea. I certainly hope that's going to be a subset of our master plan process, but I don't know that we want to raise expectations of that, because we have no idea how realistic that might or might not be. I don't know.
Well,
Just a sidebar.
And walking trails for our residents that don't have horses
Well,
get onto the land. I
Well,
mean, they've never really been allowed.
Right, in general, much more public access. We're safe. Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
just,
All right.
Moving to more public access.
good.
Well, it doesn't say that, looking back at the language again, the word predominantly jumped out at me. It doesn't say they have to keep it pristinely the way it is. It says predominantly. And so I hadn't focused on that in the past, because it's the Land Conservancy's position, as I've understood it, that they have to maintain these properties without touching anything. And that has upset quite a few neighbors, because they don't take care of fallen trees or various problems that come up, because they can't touch anything. And that really isn't what the language says.
I think
No.
it's changed
Yeah.
over the years, you're right.
Yeah, and there's been more discussion about that at the
Well,
Land
But it's
Conservancy.
30 years later.
Right.
Oh, I'm talking about recently. I've been
Well,
on-
I'm
So-
just saying, for 30 years, our residents have maybe had a trolley tour once or twice on the
Oh,
land. I mean, that's really troubling to me.
so Nancy, are you saying, is that part of the ordinance, or is that part of the agreement between the village?
I
and
think
Land
it would be
Conservancy?
in the agreement. The ordinance has to stay
Right,
exactly as it
Right,
says.
okay.
But, because in
I think
order
that's
to
a
be
good
a
suggestion.
renewal, as I understand it from Todd, we can't change the language, but we can certainly change the relationship
The
to the
agreement.
village, since we're giving them the money.
Right.
It's our money, the village's money,
Right.
our taxpayers' money.
And by the way, I'd like to emphasize that point. Some people think that the Land Conservancy is an entity unto itself and that they're a separate party. They are strictly a vehicle for us to
Exactly.
use the levy funds. It is the village that controls this. And then we happen to choose to do it with them. So I'm supporting your point.
Well, I think
But I think
Sean
that's
made
a
that
fourth point.
perfectly clear.
Right.
That being said, well, I'm going to, a couple things I want to get into
Okay.
the minutes here. The May 27th meeting, we had a resident who asked a question on there and we turned off before they got their question in, and they agree with councilperson that transparency is the utmost concern, and we have to get the word out of how it's all going to change. So I said I would get that in. And then as far as the agreement, there is language in there that was brought to my attention, and I forwarded on to our law director, because I do think that some of these things need to be changed. He's correct on this. It whereas the Land Conservancy is operated under supervision of council mayor with the consent of council, appoints 1/3 of the trustees of the Land Conservancy, and this here comes the question. I do not understand what is meant by the language that the Land Conservancy is operated under supervision of council. It seems that the Land Conservancy is not an independent body, but that they have been representing themselves as independent. So I think we have some language to go over, and Todd agrees on that.
That's great.
And then, what's the other one? And oh boy, in the final clause, number 7, it states that either party may terminate at any time after the first year of the agreement by giving 6 months' notice. Well, we're taking a 5-year levy, so is that just the agreement that gets changed?
Right.
Okay, so the agreement could be changed before the 5 years are over, and then we'd have to put a new agreement into place?
Or not.
Just the village would retain the funds.
Or the village has control of the funds. Okay, so we'll enter this in a minute.
That
But those
does,
are some things we will definitely look at going forward.
that does bring up another question about, and you've got some wording in here, Sandra, the acquisition of land subject to advanced coordination with the village council.
Right.
The question would be coordination or approval or what?
Direction.
Pardon me?
Direction.
So I think that's,
Well,
Or with the consent of the village
The-
council. We've
the
never
word-
had any input except for our voluntary input.
well, when you
And through
just
our
heard,
representative.
when you
The-
just heard the language that the mayor just said, we have the full authority. That's not,
We have an.
we have more authority in what happens with that than how I think the guidance has been, or even my understanding of it.
What you were, Karen, what you were reading was not from the ordinance itself, but from
No.
the original
From
agreement?
the agreement,
between the two entities.
the
May I-
last
These are
agreement.
really interesting conversations.
May I make one last point?
Yeah, go.
Sorry, Sandra. The part of the needing money going forward is the legal defense of legal easements can be very costly.
Right. Yeah, and no,
I mean, that is-
they need an endowment. I'm,
Right.
We're not.
Yeah.
Suggesting.
I don't
they
think we're
have
arguing that
expenses.
point at all. I
Right.
think they
No, I
need
agree.
that.
Arguing about that.
And in the proposed agreement, coordination with you specifically and the Land Conservancy feels strongly that they're, have the ability to make the final decision, but not all acquisitions were discussed with council in the past. There have been some, like is it Goldberg property recently, the old land property? I mean, that was a great collaboration between the
Yes, it
village and the Land Conservancy. But, I think, again, they're stepping up to say, we want to collaborate more closely and get the input of the council and take that into account. It's like anything else. If you're only getting, one opinion when there's so many more around the table, you might not make as good a decision, or there might be some compromise or a delay or, just changes, and they're interested in doing that. So I guess I'm encouraged by the coming together as a result of these discussions, kind of leading up to this levy. So that, for me, that's been a real positive. And
I think we're all learning new
Yep.
things with
Yep.
it.
Yeah, looking forward. So I really appreciate all the input. We'll take this back and have some new things to present at the
Yeah, I
next
mean,
council
I
meeting.
do think the process is to keep working on this. So I don't know, what do we do? Just if you
Well,
have
we
individual
pass it
comments,
until
you just, I don't know how I mean,
The,
next
well,
meeting we'll have a more definitive,
The-
That's what I would
hopefully you'll
expect.
Term sheet.
summarize our suggestions or the discussion tonight, and it'll go back to the Conservancy, and they'll look at it, and they'll.
Yeah.
Uh,
We'll keep talking.
right.
yeah.
Revision of the plan.
Revision, yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate all the time.
Okay, next, wait. Next is ordinance 2021-19. Ann?
I'd like to introduce ordinance 2021-19, an ordinance establishing a special fund to be designated as the local fiscal recovery fund and declaring an emergency.
Second,
And I would like to suspend.
second,
Sorry.
sorry, second,
Allward,
Yes.
Frankel. Reynolds.
Yes.
Sog.
yes,
Turner.
Yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes. And I would like to move that ordinance 2021-19 be adopted.
Second.
Allward,
Yes.
Frankel.
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Sog.
yes,
Turner.
yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Next is resolution 2021-20. Chip?
Yes, this is a resolution 2021-20 awarding a contract for the repair and resurfacing of various public roads in 2021 and declaring an emergency.
Second.
Allward.
Yes.
Frankel.
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Sog.
yes,
Turner.
yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes.
So before I move to approve, let me give you some quick numbers. We budgeted 684,000 this year for roads. That's the actual paving work. There's an additional budget for the engineering portion. There was a refinement once we got the bids. By the way, the bids came in effectively the cost per square yard or whatever is up about 10% from a year ago. I had a discussion, interestingly, as a sidebar with somebody last week. Their business is a friend that I was down in Charlotte for a family wedding, and I had coffee with this person, and they run a resurfacing company. And I said, "What drives the cost of asphalt?" And he said, "It's petroleum and slag, whatever the
aggregate.
aggregate. I'm sorry, that was the word. And obviously petroleum is back up from a year ago, so it's no big shock that the cost is 10% more. The numbers that first came in, Chris Courtney had a chance to really review and actually came up with a variation on what to do on Riverview that's actually going to be an improvement, but at the same time will result in 100,000 less than what was in the original paperwork. So when everything is said and done, what we're proposing is to accept the full contract. Did new language go out, or do I need to modify what's in this? Okay.
Got that this morning.
Okay, so I got a lot of different emails. Now, 785 is more than the 684 in the budget. However, two things. We're always getting caught that when part of this is we get some county money back, hopefully next year. We could get as much as 129,000 back from the county. It'll end up being exactly, depending on exactly how much material we use. This year, and Janet, maybe you could verify, but we're expecting in the next month or two, 91,000 back from the county from last year. So if we just run it on that basis, now remember that shows up under other income. It doesn't show up under the separate account. But from a pure math standpoint, this year we'd be spending 785,000, but be getting reimbursed 91,000 from last year, which happens to come to 694,000 versus a budget of 684. So I'm proposing that we approve this, even though it's technically 785.
It's
And then
also,
next year,
should be noted that those reimbursements are not in the budget. So it has the effect, what you're
good
saying-
point. Yes.
What you're saying is the effect on general reserves with the increase in the cost, but also the reimbursement will be nil,
Now can I second?
perhaps even positive.
No, because there's one other point. When we reviewed all this as to the status of the rest of the capital expenditure budget for the service, I think it's turned out that we budgeted the full funds for the River Mayfield project, but it turns out we had to pay half of that last year. So from a budget standpoint, we will be laying out 70,000 less this year for the Chagrin River project than what we have budgeted. So we're going to dig into that and come back potentially to council next month with the possibility, if we want to live with the money we've already approved for budget, to spend another 70,000 on some additional road work. But we don't have anything for that tonight, but that's just to alert you that we're going to look into that. So with that, I move that we approve resolution 2021-20.
And I really want to second this.
Stop
talking.
Allward,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welch.
Love when we do
Yes.
roads.
Whitney.
Yes.
These poor people have had to wait a long time to get these fixed.
Okay, so are there any questions from the audience at this point, Tom?
Yes, there are. We had actually a pretty consistent number of people watching, 15. I did answer one question, which was regarding whether contractors were needed to register with the village. This, as it turns out, had to do with because of the delay on live stream. I wasn't sure if the question was about cell phone towers or pickleball courts. So I wrote back, due to the delay in the live stream, I'm not sure if you're talking about a contractor for cell towers or pickleball courts. Please reply. The reply was pickle. And my reply was, contact Dave Biggert from the building department. He will know if you need to register or get a permit for the work. And the reply from the individual was, that is my, gotta scroll down a little bit. That is his plan, but my design is a work in progress. Thank you. And then he went on to say that the welcome kit was very helpful and that the village website was very informative.
Thank you.
And that ends the
Nice.
live stream questions.
Okay. Next on the agenda is to go into executive session. Before we do, I want to remind everybody that executive sessions are private. If you talk about it outside, it's a breach of trust, and you could be dismissed for this. It's just kind of getting sloppy with this and not fair to the rest of council if something's talked about with your spouse and then they go to talk to somebody else or whatever happens. Todd, do you want to add to that?
I faced this issue several times over the last 36 years in other communities and given legal opinions on it. And it is a violation of the Ohio ethics rules for you to divulge what's been discussed in the executive session. And there are actually, not that it would ever happen, but criminal penalties for violation of ethics rules of the state of Ohio. So please try to comply.
Yes, and I will say that in the July council meeting will be in the community house in person. So if people want to come and attend, they will be able to do that. And then we will still record the council meeting and then it'll go up. They could watch it at their leisure.
Is it a problem to do both?
But it won't be live.
No.
Right.
Is there a reason that it won't be live? Because I think some people find it more convenient just to watch it come to the people.
Yeah, we'll think about it.
Because you could eat dinner and.
It's
you know.
kind of problematic to get the internet and get it going. And then if there's a problem, we have to stop and we need broadband, Larry.
Don't
Don't have that many people on. live.
15, that's 15 was good, but
Anyway, so we need, the July meeting will be in person here and we need a motion to adjourn and go into, or not adjourn, to go into executive session.
So
Sorry,
moved.
Getting ahead of myself.
Second.
Executive
So we
session
need
for
to
the
read it.
purpose of,
Consider the appointment of a public official.
who made the motion? Mary?
Mary,
I did.
who seconded?
I did.
Allward,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Saab,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes. Thank you.
Ed, you don't have to leave.
Maybe he doesn't.
Thanks, Julie.